My campaign manager
Good.
was texting going, I can't get in.
Yes, we were just making sure that everybody could get in the right way. Good evening. This is Politics NY, not with Sky. I am Alex Mitchell. Welcome to Schneps Media's rapid fire debate for the 5th New York City Council District. Now, if you couldn't tell already, we've had just the slightest of technical difficulties, which we are working out. I will be joined very shortly by Politics NY editor-in-chief Stephen Witt, who is, I believe, one of our attendees right now that I need to make into a panelist if he is there. He is not there. Well, Stephen, I hope you're watching and I hope that you find a way to join. If not, you have my cell phone number and you can continue to text me throughout the program. But for now, let's get started. District 5, how are we today? I feel like Gordon Bombay from the
Happy
Mighty
to be
Ducks.
here. Good. Great. Hi, everyone.
Feeling good.
Okay. So first, let us go around the debate, and in alphabetical order with last names, let's just do an elevator pitch intro where we talk a little bit about ourselves. Starting with Billy. Yes, Billy.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, everybody. My name is Billy Freeland, running for City Council here in the 5th District. I've been serving my community on Community Board 8 since 2018, where I've been elected by my colleagues as an officer 3 years in a row. I'm an attorney with experience representing clients seeking housing repairs, clients in civil rights, voting rights, LGBTQ rights cases, and I'm fighting for a new deal for New York because we need real affordable housing in our city. We need a Green New Deal for NYCHA, and we need to fight against the rising tide of climate change. We need a public transportation renaissance, and we need a new deal that is building a just economy for all New Yorkers. That's what I'm fighting for, and I'm excited to be here to share my vision tonight.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Lamort, and I'm proudly running for New York City Council here in Manhattan's 5th District as a disabled New Yorker, a proud union member, a labor advocate, community organizer, and Yorkville resident, because here in District 5, working families know what we need. We need someone that will fight for housing, disability, economic, and racial justice. And I'm ready to be that person for our community. For the last 10 years, I've worked as a labor advocate, fighting for unionized workers in a variety of industries, passing legislation down at City Hall and up in Albany. I've led a movement to make New York and our community more accessible following a 2013 subway accident that left me with a lifelong disability. Here in our community, I've led local movements as a co-founder of a nightly Black Lives Matter vigil to speak truth to power and demand changes to policing in our community and city at large. So I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be leading a movement for an affordable and accessible and an equitable community and city. And I look forward to sharing more about myself and my experience with you tonight. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Julie.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thanks to Schneps Media for putting this together. Alex, thank you so much for moderating. I'm running for City Council because the city is in crisis, and I believe we need strong, experienced leadership. I've served as commissioner of 3 different New York City agencies, served as commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs. I also served as commissioner of Media and Entertainment, as well as the city's census director, where we beat most other cities all across the country to deliver billions. I've also served as a 7-year community board chair, and I'm a professor at Columbia where I teach on New York City government. And I'm running for City Council because I do believe we need strong, experienced leaders in the City Council, particularly with 35 open seats. I'm also a mom and a 3rd-generation resident of the district and thrilled to be running for City Council District 5. Thank you. Oh, and I do want to mention, Alex, as I said at the start, I have a hard out at 8:30, so I'm sorry that I do need to leave early, but I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. And Kim.
Thank you so much. Hey, folks, I am Kim Oscaritolo. I am a journalist, an advocate, and an activist. For 20 years, I have spoken truth to power, and for a decade, I have stood up to powerful interests and advocated for my community as legislative committee chair for New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, as president of the Manhattan Young Democrats, as a member of the Living Wage Coalition, and as the founder of Yorkville Buy Local. I'm running for City Council because we have seen what happens when the most powerful people in this city are left unchecked, and I'm hoping to bring an independent voice to City Hall. I'm going there to fight for transparency, for accountability, and for true ethics reform. And most of all, I want to bring a journalist's eye to City Hall. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tricia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Schneps Media, for putting this together. My name is Trisha and Shimamura, and I'm so excited to be running for the 5th Council District. I'm a proud Japanese Puerto Rican woman of color running in a district that has never elected somebody who looks like me. As we face more AAPI hate across our country and in our city, I've never been more proud to be a Shimamura running in our district. I'm a mom. Just 22 months ago, I gave birth to my son, Teddy, and I joined the hundreds of thousands of other working families out there who are struggling to balance the demands of work and home. And finally, I'm a social worker. I got into this line of work because I wanted to fix systems that were just broken and designed to allow some of our most vulnerable to fall through the cracks. I'm ultimately running for office because I love our community and I want to do everything I can to make sure the working families, seniors, small businesses, and every resident living here have what they need to stay in our city and thrive. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Alex and Chefs Media. My name's Chris Sosa. I'm a gay Latino grandson of immigrants from Costa Rica and Guatemala, and I'm running for the 5th Council District because I believe we need leadership focused on compassion, community, and moral courage. As a former New York State Senate aide who served on the team that passed the New York State DREAM Act, and as somebody who worked on the earliest versions of the Fair and Timely Parole Bill, elder parole, in addition to the Women's Equality Act, Reproductive Health Act, I believe that I can bring a level of both experience and fresh new leadership that's ready to take on these challenges with the degree of courage that we haven't seen from our previous leaders.
Thank you all for the lovely and riveting introductions. We had questions planned for this debate, and of course we're going to stick to them, but there is breaking news that happened earlier today that I think is really relevant, not just to your district, but to New York City as a whole. And when I say that district, that is a district, of course, the candidates know this, but for the many attendees that are listening, we are talking about City Council District 5, which encompasses the Upper East Side, Yorkville, Lenox Hill, Carnegie Hill, not Hall, Roosevelt Island, Midtown East, Sutton Place, El Barrio, and East Harlem. El Barrio, East Harlem, close to each other. I believe they're the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. My coverage area was the Bronx, so I was not far away. But anyway, May 19th, it appears that it is possible for New York City to enter a fuller state of reopening, if not a completely full. Looks like subways will be coming back 2 days before that on May 17th. For your district, what are some of the most important priorities for bouncing back from COVID? Now, with this, I'd like to go in reverse alphabetical order, the opposite that we just did. So, Chris, please, and also please keep responses between 1 to 2 minutes. Thank you.
It's too complicated of a question for 1 to 2 minutes, Alex. But
doing my best.
I'll try my best. So, obviously, the most pressing issues facing this district right now: small business survival and housing. Because as we see an influx of people that are ready to come back, as so many people have left and new families are wanting to move in, we need to ensure that we don't see the same cycle of skyrocketing rents and luxury developments coming in and preventing people from actually accessing the area. In addition to that, we need to incentivize people who are in ownership positions of the land in which small businesses sit to actually rent out the spaces. Because we end up in a situation where we have these vacant storefronts, and they stay vacant for a really long time because there's not a lot of disincentive for holding out until a large corporation can pay the fees. So we need to ensure that we're incentivizing mom and pops and that we're incentivizing people to rent to them. So between these two elements, then you're going to have an issue around ensuring that we have solid accessibility, especially around transportation. We're bringing transportation back, but even if we go back to the levels that we were already dealing with, including surface transportation, there's still a lot of accessibility issues, especially around buses. So we need to ensure that New Yorkers are able to get to work, get home, have accessible homes in which to live, and have a lively culture around us that's returning to a level that's slightly greater than we had before, because we were already starting to see an uptick in storefront vacancies and such before the pandemic, and now it's just worse. So that's going to be a top priority.
Thank you. And everybody, I'd like to welcome, better late than never, PoliticsNY Editor-in-Chief Stephen Witt. Nobody ever said computers were easy, but welcome. And now with that,
I'm there now. All right.
And now Trisha.
Welcome, Stephen. Happy to have you. Thanks again for helping put this together. I'm so excited and so thrilled that we're finally getting back and moving towards a next kind of phase of recovery. But I agree with Chris that small businesses, affordability, these are top issues. I'm going to throw another one in there, which is I don't really see us fully recovering economically from this crisis until we enable over 50% of our population, i.e. women, to return to the workforce. And that's only going to be achieved through universal childcare. In our district, childcare costs somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 a year. It's frankly completely unobtainable for most families. And even if you took every single childcare slot, every single home care slot available on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island, it would still only actually meet the need of 20% of our families. We are, by all definitions, a childcare desert, which is why I've proposed a universal childcare plan that would create a sliding scale based on income with a percentage cap so that families never have to pay more in childcare than they do in rent. My plan also proposes elements where we actually empower those who are in the childcare industry, who are by and large women of color, and immigrants to expand quickly into some of those small business, some of those storefronts that Chris was talking about that we see so many of on the streets, and bring actually some pay parity to this kind of fraction of our overall care economy, which right now is being woefully underpaid. So to answer your question, yes to small businesses, yes to affordability, but let's also empower those communities that have always, frankly, been left off the table way before the pandemic. Let's help our working families by enacting universal childcare.
Thank you. And now, if I'm not mistaken, Kim, you are next. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. I'm actually going to echo what Chris said about small businesses. 2 years ago, I founded Yorkville Buy Local to try and help promote and protect our local mom and pops because we had so many empty storefronts in our neighborhood. And obviously the pandemic has only exacerbated that problem. There was a research project from Harvard University that said that 40% of the small businesses that were in the city in January of 2020 no longer exist. So this is going to be a huge challenge for the city. I've put out a very detailed small business recovery plan that involves things like direct financial relief. That means utilizing federal funds in the form of small loans and grants, particularly to micro businesses and minority-owned businesses. I think that it's going to mean, giving small business owners the opportunity to negotiate leases fairly, to stop the sort of incredible rent increases that we've been seeing all over the city that force these small businesses to close, and then finally real oversight of tech apps and companies that have been exploiting both small businesses as well as delivery workers. Beyond that, I think we need to talk about healthcare in this country, but specifically in this city. And I think that COVID has really laid bare so many of the inequities in our healthcare system that already existed, but now we know how severe it is. And so we really need to look at investing resources in our public hospital system, which we know primarily serves lower income communities and communities of color. We need to talk very seriously about the inequities in care. We know that people of color, particularly Black women, receive worse care and worse outcomes than their white counterparts. We need implicit bias training. We need more funding to make sure that we are, ensuring that health outcomes are equal across all neighborhoods in the city. So I think both looking at the small businesses and the economic impact of COVID, but also really taking a look at our healthcare system, how we can make it more equal, how we can get universal healthcare to everyone, invest in our public hospital system, and make sure that, God forbid, we are faced with another pandemic, that we will not see that kind of problem across our neighborhoods again.
Thank you. And Julie.
Yes, well, first of all, we need to get everyone vaccinated because right now on the Upper East Side, the vaccination rates for people over 18 are almost at 2/3, but in East Harlem, over 18 is about 50%. So if we don't get everyone fully vaccinated, it is going to be hard for this city to fully reopen. City employees are now back to work largely. That's almost 300,000 city workers, are almost all starting to come back to work, but we still have record unemployment in the city, and we need to address it once and for all. We need to fully reopen our schools. I'm proud in this race to have the endorsement of the UFT. We need to work with the UFT, with the DOE, and with the mayor. We have to bring all parties to the table. It's unacceptable that our kids are not fully back in school. They're losing learning by going remote, and we need to change that. We also have to focus on small businesses, as everyone said. So that means basically connecting small businesses to federal PPP loans. It means lowering fines on small businesses. I did that as Commissioner of Consumer Affairs. Now every city agency should be lowering on fines on these small businesses, giving them a chance to cure these fines before going to a violation. And we need to bring tourism back, because let's face it, we have 240,000 small businesses in the city. 1/3 are going to close, sadly, because of COVID. We can't allow that. And it really is going to require a concerted effort on the part of the city, and to have cheerleaders and boosters for our city to bring the city's economy back and to actually grow jobs and bring tourism back to support so many vital services and small businesses that need to be supported right now.
Thank you, Julie. Rebecca.
I'm looking forward to the reopening, but to ensure that everyone's safe in the process, we need to be sure we continue vaccinating New Yorkers. As Julie said, here in our community, we are seeing high vaccination rates, but not in the entire community. Pfizer today also announced they're going to start vaccinating children starting at the age of 12. So now as we see adults being vaccinated, we need to be sure as the reopening happens that children are getting vaccinated as well. And we're trusting and following science on that front. And then outside of that, I think about so many things that have been mentioned already. Housing. Right now, I'm one of 2 tenants on my floor in my walk-up apartment building. So we're going to see people moving back to the neighborhoods, and we've seen a reprieve in rents going up. So we need to be working to make sure rents don't skyrocket again, that we're protecting our affordable units. We're building more affordable housing, quite honestly. And also we're working with our small businesses on the rents that they're under. As many have said, many businesses were closing long before COVID. This is not a new issue in our community or our city. And I want to be sure that we're helping small businesses that were able to hold on by their fingertips during COVID continue to thrive in our city, continue surviving. And that means putting direct monies in hands, working with them to ensure that outdoor dining doesn't impact accessibility on our streets or pedestrian access on our streets, that they're following code compliance on those fronts. And then also we need to think about education. We need to think about open streets. We need to think about how we've had so many things come online as new policies, new resources during COVID, things like open streets, as I mentioned. We need to be sure we're protecting those. Our community has some of the least outdoor green space. And right now, East End Avenue is open, and I'm working with our mutual aid society locally to ensure that that remains. Outside of that, we also need to be looking at what we're doing as children return to school, the mental health impacts, and mental health impacts, quite honestly, for everyone. You know, we've all spent so much time indoors, isolated, seniors, disabled New Yorkers, younger New Yorkers not going to school, and we need to be sure that we have the mental health, the social support there for them as everything reopens and we get back to a quasi-normal. I do want to say, though, I don't want to see a return to normal, because normal harmed so many New Yorkers, and we can't go back to once what was. We need to look at what happened during COVID. We need to take stock, and we need to have a reckoning as a city about how we treat essential workers, so many of whom were overlooked for far too long, how we treat housing, how it has to be a human right, how we're supporting small businesses. My favorite places to go in the community aren't a CVS or a supermarket. There are small mom and pops. They're Delizia Pizza on my corner, and that's who we need to be supporting. And also, as a part of this, as Chris said, we need to be thinking about accessibility in all of these decisions. For example, remote work and flexible work schedules is something so many disabled New Yorkers have cried out for so long, and COVID brought that to us in an instant, the snap of a finger. But that's going to go away for so many New Yorkers, and we need to be sure as we reopen again, we're not going back to normal, but we're looking for a new, better society long-term here in our city.
And Billy.
So first, we got to get everybody vaccinated, and we need to get to a place where we're opening our schools 5 days a week. Families need it. Our children need it. That's the very first step we have to take. But I look at the last year plus, and I think there are 3 major areas where the city needs to not just go back to normal, but do better than what normal was. Because think about it, in New York, we lost 1 million jobs during the pandemic, but in America, our billionaires made $1 trillion. Around the world, billionaires made $4 trillion. We had a K-shaped recovery. We had New Yorkers losing their job, losing their income, losing their livelihood, hanging on to their home by virtue of an eviction moratorium, while the rich got richer. We need to flip the script. We need a recovery for all New Yorkers. So I start with on housing. we need to extend and keep extending the eviction moratorium, but make sure that we're providing the good cause eviction and protections for renters to make sure that people can stay in their homes. We need to make sure that we're building real affordable housing, and for people experiencing homelessness, that we're building supportive housing and safe havens, including in neighborhoods like ours. We can't be saying not in my backyard to shelter for those who need it most. On small businesses, we got to make sure that this is not a recovery where private equity firms get to pick up storefronts and distressed properties and enrich themselves. We know they have the deep pockets to do it. I just mentioned they made billions and trillions over the last year. We need government to step in, support existing small businesses, and make sure that we're putting in a vacancy tax on vacant storefronts so that landlords can't just keep what they've been doing, jacking up the rent, kicking out the tenant, waiting for a deep-pocketed tenant to come in. And we need a public health reckoning. Even before COVID, in our district, if you walked one block, 96th Street to 97th Street, the Upper East Side to East Harlem, life expectancy fell by 9 years. On the Upper East Side, you have life expectancy of 85 years. East Harlem, it's 76 years. And again, that was pre-COVID. We know during this pandemic that we're vaccinating, as was mentioned earlier, East Harlem at far, far lower rates, totally inadequate, immoral rates, especially compared to the Upper East Side. So we need a reckoning about what kind of society we're going to be, what kind of country we're going to be. I think don't judge us by how well our wealthiest are doing, judge us by how we're treating the poorest among us. And so what is the answer, the most pressing issue? It's an affordability crisis. It's affordability for tenants trying to hang on to the roof over their head. It's affordability for small businesses. And it is a health and wellness crisis. We need a right to healthcare, a right to mental health care. And we've got to make sure every New Yorker has a roof over their head as a basic human right.
Thank you, Billy. Julie, we know that you need to kind of get going. So we're going to give you first crack at this next question. And also, if you would like to just, after you answer, say something about your campaign before you leave, you
Sure.
are more than welcome to do so. And Steve has our next question regarding budgeting.
Yeah, the state recently passed a $212 billion budget that included a huge federal stimulus money, and it also included a wealth tax. City council members, don't have anything to do with the state budget, but Mayor de Blasio proposed a $98.6 billion, which was an 11% increase over 88, I believe, last year.
Mhm.
And, I hear that you all, feel that money needs to be spent. Do you feel the budget's bloated? And if not, where would you like to see cuts in the budget? Or do you think we should just spend more on it?
And this is such an important question. Under Mayor de Blasio, special advisors at City Hall and at various city agencies grew by 204%. I can attest to this firsthand. That is unacceptable. We have a situation in New York City where the 70,000 summer youth jobs were cut at last year's council budget. That's unacceptable. These are at-risk youth. We need to restore those cuts. In addition, the sanitation budget took a $100 million cut and 400 sanitation workers were let go. So there were choices that have been made in this year's budget and last year's budget that I think are wrong and that I think that we need to change. And also I would say Thrive is a program, a $1.2 billion program that we need to cut. So is the budget bloated, to answer your question? In certain areas, in Thrive and in the additional special advisors that the mayor hired, absolutely. But in other areas, we need to make sure that cuts are not made, because this is always a dance between the mayor and the council. And we're in the middle of this process. We'll see how it turns out, but we need strong, experienced people who are negotiating on behalf of the city council to make sure that the district's needs and the city's needs are met overall. And so should I sum up now for a minute or go into that?
Go for it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to leave early. I really want to thank Schneps Media. I want to thank all of my opponents who are on this. It's always a pleasure being with all of you. And to the people who are listening, I'm so sorry I have to leave early. If you have additional questions for me, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any question. You can reach me at julie4nyc.com. That's 4FOR. And I will say in closing, I strongly believe my experience as a 3-time New York City commissioner, as a 7-year community board chair, as a third-generation resident of this district, the area that I'm raising my family in. This is why I'm running. I'm so excited about running for city council. I think we have enormous challenges ahead, but I do think that our best days are really yet to come, both for our community and for our city as a whole, as we grapple with one of the greatest crises our city has ever faced. So thank you so much for having me, and happy to answer any additional questions. So please reach out to me. Thank you.
Julie, thank you.
Thanks,
And-
Alex. And thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Julie.
So for the rest of the answers, I'm simply going in the order of who appears on my screen. Trisha, you're next.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Stephen, you know, I'm going to be pretty critical of Mayor de Blasio here. I think that the mayor has consistently looked for Band-Aid solutions when we really do need comprehensive change and reform. In terms of this budget, I do think that in areas that it is bloated. To echo some of what Julie was saying, I think that we need to look at where this money is being spent on staffing and administration instead. I believe that the majority of our funds should be, the budget is a values document at the end of the day, and it should be reflecting the values of our city. Money should be going directly to those communities and neighborhoods that need it most. And I'm going to echo and say again, you're talking about working families, seniors, small businesses, students. That's really what it comes down to. I will just say, in addition to sanitation cuts in the last budget, we saw proposals for cuts to DYCDs, youth. We saw cuts to parks. We saw so many cuts to, we always have to fight for our seniors, which is just ridiculous to me, how much we have to fight for the Department of the Aging. And really that's where it's problematic. So yes, in some ways we see a bloated budget, but in other ways, we really need to double down on what we know is most important and we know is what's worth saving. I would love to see a budget that's proposed where DYC, where the Department of the Aging doesn't have to fight for every dollar and rely on the council to put back money into its department for caseworkers. I would love to see a budget where our parks dollars don't have to be grappled with and fought over in closed door rooms, particularly because I've spent the last decade fighting for our East River Esplanade. Let me tell you, we need every single dollar for that waterfront, because the waterfront's not just a park for us. We know that it's our first line of defense against rising storm waters. We know that we need to fill those sinkholes, because if we don't, we endanger the FDR, we endanger our hospitals, we endanger our NYCHA residents, and so much more. So really, I'm looking at this through an intersectional lens. Everything is a housing issue. Everything is a workforce development issue. Everything is a resiliency issue. And I'm going to be looking at that budget the same exact way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, a budget absolutely has to be a statement of principles, and I've actually done budget advocacy before, so I'm very well acquainted with the New York City budget. As council members, it'll be the very first item that comes before us. Budget conversations begin in January, so come 2022, we need to be ready to hit the ground running, and there absolutely is bloat in the budget in some areas, and I want to see our New York City budget be a true statement of principles, where we're empowering New Yorkers in ways that help them with housing, with transportation access, with education support, childcare, healthcare, senior services, bringing back our park funding, our sanitation funding. We can no longer allow our budget to just be spending, and not thinking about the impact on the other side, not thinking about what we're not funding. So for example, we can grow the NYPD budget by billions of dollars under Mayor de Blasio. And so for me, when I start thinking about our budget and how we need to better empower, oh, fun cat, hello, little Democrat. It's okay, my dog's asleep right behind the screen, no worries. But I want to be sure that we're taking immediately money from the NYPD budget, $3 billion at the least, and reallocating that to help empower New Yorkers, because I reject the notion of austerity budgets. Austerity budgets hurt working families, they hurt seniors, they hurt students, they hurt disabled New Yorkers, they hurt everyone, unless you're living at the level of the 1%, quite honestly. And we have the power here in New York with a budget larger than some entire states have. Let's be honest about the pie we're cutting up of dollars here. And we can do more with it. We can be sure that we're funding public housing for the updates needed there. We can be sure we're funding more school seats. and hiring new teachers as we have students return to classrooms. So we're not seeing overcrowding in classrooms, because what is one thing COVID has shown us? Overcrowding isn't safe. It isn't healthy. And that's the same in our classrooms as well for learning. Also, we need to be looking at how we're allocating money to community-based services to help empower New Yorkers in ways that never have them interact with a policing situation, an unjust criminal justice system, or if you're a small business, never having to go and pay high fines, because we can have the educational support, we can have the business support to help you stay compliant, get compliant if you're not right now with your business and how you're operating. So for me, I want to look at cutting a lot of fat in outside contractor spending, special advisors, like Julie said, and really we need to look at the NYPD budget, because they have billions of dollars they're sitting on that can be used so much more better to help New Yorkers, especially as we come out of this COVID economic downturn.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I love what Rebecca just said about budgets. Not just Rebecca and Tricia, budgets being moral documents, and how austerity is simply the wrong approach because it hurts working families. This question is more of a philosophical than a logistical question, because it's about what our values are. When you ask if there's bloat in the budget, of course there's bloat in every budget, but there is significantly more that's being underfunded than that's being overfunded in these budgets. We talked a lot about seniors, but I noticed nobody gave the figure. As you all know, it's 0.5% of the 2021 budget. That's terrible. Our seniors, 0.5%. That's what we think they're worth. It's ridiculous. So we need to talk about revenue generation. And when we talk about cutting, we need to cut from the areas that are causing harm to our communities, not from the things our communities need. We need to close a couple jails. We need to cut from the police budget. We need to ensure that our families, our schools, our people's lives are funded. So when we talk about, is the budget bloated? I hear Julie talk about Thrive NYC all the time. Thrive NYC is not the problem. There's a lot bigger problems than Thrive NYC. We need to have a top to bottom reevaluation of how we're prioritizing our budget.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look, I agree. Budgets are a statement of our values. And when you look at the fact that our parks, for example, get less than 1% of our budget, the fact that we've had to cut composting programs. I mean, I volunteer at the East 82nd Street Green Market. Folks are always asking, when's it coming back? We have to tell them, well, it was budget cuts. We see garbage cans overflowing. Well, the sanitation budget got cut. So I don't think anyone can say with any seriousness that it's that the budget is bloated. It's that the way our funding is allocated is completely out of whack. And so we need to talk really seriously about how we allocate those funds. I am grateful that the federal government was able to come through so that we are able to hopefully reinstate a lot of these programs, including the composting program. I'm grateful for that. But at the end of the day, we're going to need to have a serious conversation about what our values are and where we want to put those resources. So I agree. I think we need to invest far more in our social services, homeless outreach. I think that we need to increase the value of housing vouchers to help homeless people get off the streets and get into more permanent homes. I think that there are ways that we can cut certain things out of the budget, but they shouldn't be done on the backs of the most vulnerable New Yorkers. I think we can look at things like procurement reform. We know that the way New York City does procurement is inefficient. It costs us far more money than it should. And I think that there are ways that we can look at cutting the budget that don't mean cutting services to people. But finally, and most importantly, I think we need to have a really serious conversation about oversight. And what the agencies are doing, because the city council passes good laws all the time, things like tenant harassment laws, laws to help people who need to file human rights violations or complaints. But if we're not properly funding those agencies, then all those laws really do nothing. I mean, I have a good friend who's been dealing with a human rights violation for now going on 2 years, and there are so few people assigned to those cases and so few inspectors that they can't get anywhere with it, and they're paid so little that they constantly leave, and then those people have to get educated on the cases all over again. So that's really where the money needs to be going, and the city council should be doing its oversight job in making sure that the agencies are funded to be able to do the job that they are meant to do, that we are putting those resources to truly help the people who are most vulnerable in our city, and do what we can to allocate resources fairly. So it's not about the budget being bloated, it's about taking a look at our values and priorities and making sure that we are allocating those funds properly for everybody.
And Billy.
Stephen, it's a phenomenal question. And since everyone's had a chance to talk about, well, a budget's a statement of values, let me put a different spin. I'll just quote our president, who says, "Don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value." And as others have said, we have a budget that devalues seniors, devalues the Department of the Aging, devalues parks, devalues things that we know create real public safety. And I'll just make the point this way, I've actually throughout this campaign been using data on how much it costs to incarcerate someone on Rikers Island. We have new numbers, so my opponents will be glad to hear me not be a total broken record. We're now spending $1,200 per night to incarcerate someone on Rikers Island, $429,000 per year. Think what we could be doing. This is, we're being penny wise, pound foolish. Think about what we could be doing if we're actually giving people a roof over their heads, permanent supportive housing, real mental health services, alternatives to incarceration. I look at this budget and I do think there is waste. Like I just mentioned, I would also say our council member, Ben Kalos, identified up to $15 billion in budget savings in a letter he sent during the pandemic. That includes the $5 to $10 billion we're spending on tax breaks for real estate. Think about Hudson Yards got $6 billion in tax exemptions. The council member identified, I think, $375 million in outside contracts that are unnecessary. So there's absolutely waste in the budget, but I don't want us to have an austerity mentality. This is the wrong time. We're coming out of a recession, a near depression. Now is the time to be spending, but spending wisely, spending in things that we know are going to make us healthier and better. Green jobs, a Green New Deal for NYCHA, infrastructure, investing in our parks, investing in our roads and our bridges, our public transit, making sure that we're really investing in open space. I want to reimagine the FDR Drive. I also want to reimagine 3rd Avenue, take it from 7 lanes wide, narrow it, turn it into a beautiful boulevard like you see in a lot of European cities. And I also think we need to be talking about the capital budget as separate from our operating budget, Stephen. I think we have room to grow the capital budget. Right now, we are $40 billion below our debt limit as a city, and we are not spending on debt servicing anywhere near the amount that economists would tell you gets you too close to spending on debt servicing as part of your operating budget. So I would say let's increase capital spending, but increase it on what? I want capital dollars going toward housing, specifically to NYCHA, much needed NYCHA repairs. I want $4 billion per year going toward NYCHA, and I want capital spending going toward our parks and our infrastructure, things that'll create jobs. There's a Climate Works for All coalition that has proposed a Green New Deal that would create 100,000 jobs in New York City. That's going to be good for our economy, good for our infrastructure, good for our long-term health. That's the kind of budget I want to see. Those are the kind of values I want our budget to hold.
And in the city council, if you were to pick, you could only have your pick of 3 committees to sit on. Which 3 would you sit on?
And for this question, we're going to just send it right back. So Billy, Kim, Chris, Rebecca, Tricia.
The number 1 committee I want to serve on is environmental protection. I want to be a leader in fighting climate change through the committee. We just lost Costa Constantinides, an incredible fighter, champion of Local Law 97. I'd like to fill those very large shoes of his. The second committee is oversight. I'm an attorney. I think I can bring the skills that I've honed conducting investigations to analyze all of our agencies, looking for those waste and inefficiencies we talked about, Stephen, but also making sure that we're seeing real accountability out of NYCHA, real accountability at the MTA. That is one of the real only levers that the city council is going to have potentially on the MTA. The third committee is transportation. We need what I'm calling a transportation renaissance. I put out an 11-page proposal. You can see it at billyfreeland.com/policies. I promise it makes for good bedside or beach reading. And we need really inventive solutions on public transit. Everything from the MTA, which yes, we have very little control over, but we should use our bully pulpit, right down to bike lanes, open streets, accessibility, and a Bill of Rights for delivery workers. So to sum up, environmental protection, oversight, and transportation.
Who is next?
Kim, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So folks ask this question. The first answer I always give is sanitation. And I know that's a weird answer, but drives me crazy that in one of the greatest cities in the world, the best thing we've come up with is throwing bags of garbage on the sidewalk a few times a week. So I would love to be a part of working with both experts, but also environmental advocates on figuring out how we can do a better job of dealing with our waste in the city, including containerizing our waste and a host of other recommendations that have been made. Secondly, I'll echo Billy and talk about government oversight. I talk a lot about oversight in my background in journalism and really focusing on transparency and holding agencies accountable. And I think being on the oversight committee would give me a great opportunity to really take hold of that and really hold these agencies accountable for what they're doing. And then finally, about housing. I mean, I think, everyone here understands that, the housing crisis is one of the greatest crises facing our city. And I would love to be a part of the solution and helping to figure out how we can develop far more affordable housing, ways that we can work to keep people in their homes, and obviously work in conjunction with the Committee on Homelessness to make sure that we are getting people off the street and into permanent homes. So that would be Sanitation, Government Oversight, and Committee on Housing.
Thank you.
Chris, all you.
Awesome. I gotta say, I love all the cats tonight. I've seen Kim's cat. I've seen Trisha's cat. My cat was like right here at my foot. So it's like it's a thing this evening. So that's great. You're the first person, Stephen, to ask for 3. We usually only get asked for 1. So let's go through it. Housing and buildings, along with land use. I believe these 2 things work together in conjunction because you really can't talk about housing without talking about zoning. And we're dealing with this crisis throughout the entire city whereby families are being priced out of their living spaces. People are not able to find new affordable housing. And you have this movement towards the privatization of public housing, which is just incredibly dangerous. And we need to put a stop to it. In addition to that, immigration, it's an issue of passion of mine and my professional background. I've passed legislation around immigration. It's one of the core tenets of my existence in politics. I would not be here today were it not for my immigrant grandparents from Costa Rica and Guatemala. And I believe that immigrants over the past few years have faced unprecedented challenges, and things are getting better under the Biden administration, but they are still not good at all. And our city could be doing a lot more to support our immigrant families.
Rebecca.
The 3 committees I would want to serve on: first, housing and buildings. Housing is the #1 need in our community, and I want to get there and be sure that we have a new way to build and develop affordable housing that's truly affordable in perpetuity. Next is the Committee on Mental Health, Substance Abuse, and Disabilities. I'm a disabled New Yorker, and our lack of access, inclusion, service is something that is a human rights issue, and we need to have a real come to fruition moment as that. We need to have a reckoning moment here as a city on that. Long term with that committee, I want to break out all of those pieces. Mental health should be its own committee. New Yorkers in need of mental health support are not getting services by lumping it in with 2 other issues. Substance abuse, same can be said. New Yorkers that need substance support, it can't be addressed if all of these issues are put together. And then disabled New Yorkers, it's such an intersectional issue. Disability justice, accessibility, inclusion needs to be a part of every policy decision and conversation we're having. And having these 3 together in one committee means no New Yorker in any of those 3 areas are getting the full service they need from our government. So I want to be on that committee. I want to chair that committee and change that committee long term, so New Yorkers actually have the support they need from it in a very different way. And the final one is land use. I'm a proud member of Labor's Local 79. For the last decade, I've worked on building trades issues mostly, and I know so much of what goes on in our development process, in our construction process, and how developers run the table right now, how our procurement system is on its head and needs to be completely overhauled. Reform is not enough. We need to change how we do contracting, how we do workforce requirements, how we do binding community input. And that can all happen through the Land Use Committee, which is also the final stopping point for so many of our large scale infrastructure projects throughout the city, here locally as well. And there I'd be able to put my expertise, my knowledge to work in a very real way and ensure that we're building in a way that's responsible, that's affordable, that's equitable, and also contextual here in our community.
Thank you.
Trisha, close us out.
Yep. So thanks again for the question. I think that I'm going to echo a lot of what my colleagues here are saying. Housing and buildings definitely as one of my top committees. We don't have I would say a luxury housing crisis in our city. In fact, I don't honestly think that our district needs one additional unit of luxury housing. We do have an affordability crisis in our city, and we need deeply affordable and middle income housing in every single neighborhood. I believe that diverse communities are strong communities, and the only way that we do that is through housing. So absolutely housing and buildings. Second, I believe I've spent a lot of my time, as many people know, fighting for our parks and open space. So I would say Parks and Rec. I think it was Rebecca who said it earlier, but our district does have some of the least amount of open space per population size in our entire city. And I serve as the co-chair of the Parks and Waterfront Committee for Community Board 8, in addition to being the first vice chair of our board. It's something that's near and dear to me. And I believe that it's, again, not just access to park space, although my son, my 2-year-old, would loves that we have access to a playground near us, but it's also resiliency. question. It's how quickly can we bounce back from a storm? It's how do we keep our seniors and our neighbors cool in the summer? It's all of those things and more. And so really, especially since the pandemic has shown us just how vital open space is, just how important it is to be able to connect while staying socially distant. I really am interested in innovative new ways of how we increase access to our parks and open space throughout the entire city. And finally, I'm going to say sanitation as well. Thank you. Actually, Schneps just printed my op-ed, which was a big love letter to our sewage system, which I loved. But I really do think that how we deal with our waste is important. And it's, again, goes back to resiliency. It goes back to whether we look at our sewage and our waste system as an obstacle or as a method through which we become more resilient, we become more sustainable. And I really do think I love talking about our sewage system. I love talking about these other infrastructure pieces that just don't get enough attention. 100 years old is too old for our infrastructure. We really need to invest more. We need to create benchmarks for ourselves that we can actually match. We need to invest in our water treatment facilities, invest in our water mains. I can talk about this really all night long, so I won't. But really, I think it'd be wonderful to bring some enthusiasm and bring some geeky, nerdy passion to the committee, and really talk about how we bring our city into the next generation.
Well, as far as the sewer system goes, I can think of 4 turtles and 1 rat who would be very appreciative to see some upgrades there.
Every time it rains more than 1/10 of an inch of water, we are pumping raw sewage into our waterways. I will just leave you with that. Let's do
that's
it.
Charming.
Upgrade our sewage.
So now, to close out in our final 9 minutes, I would like everybody to unmute. This is before we got started, I mentioned I'd like to have a little bit of fun and end on a light, friendly note. And to those people who think that politics is vicious and rigorous and candidates turn on each other's backs, you've all missed probably one of the greatest displays of team unity that happened just before we got on this Zoom call. On our end, I will admit it, we were experiencing some extreme technical difficulties, and I don't know what I did, but I managed to disable the video of all other participants just minutes before we started, and Stephen couldn't even find his way in. It was just a double whammy of whatever could go wrong did go wrong.
You locked him out. We know that.
Weren't you the one who got kicked out anyway when I made Trisha the host?
What?
Ooh, it's getting spicy.
Anyway, everyone on this panel right now work together to try to fix the problem. And what we got the debate started at what I want to say 8:02. A tremendous display of teamwork. Yes, Chris was. I promoted Trisha to be a panelist for a few minutes to try to troubleshoot the problem. She did, in fact, remove Chris from the debate.
Was evicted.
All right, let's ask a fun question. Just to go.
Moratorium.
So I am going somewhere with this, and I'd like you all in a conversation, not really a one-on-one, say something nice about one of your opponents.
That's not hard.
That's not hard.
We all like each other.
We have a group text all together too. So
You go to a
Just
local bar.
us. The group text is just the 5 of us. Read into that what you will.
Okay. All right. Some shade has been thrown. I see that.
I'll start if
Go ahead.
it's okay. I think everyone will say this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that Rebecca has done in really centering disability advocacy and accessibility as a main issue. And I know Billy and I were at a press conference she had related to making the CFB and the election system more accessible. And I know Trisha and Chris supported that as well. So that's I have nice things to say about everybody, but that's my official nice thing that I will say.
thank you.
Very nice.
I'm going to say something nice about every last one of you in order of on my screen. Rebecca, you are one of the best advocates I've ever met in your life and my life. And your authenticity just shines through you. Trisha, I connect with you on this like deep level, as you know, because we both have this shared immigrant background. And I was not expecting to make such a good friend of one of my opponents while running for office. Kim, I've literally voted for you before. I think you're fantastic. You have been just this incessantly hardworking and humble public servant. And Billy, I've rarely met a human as smart as you are. You are one of the first people, you are the first candidate who reached out to me directly when you jumped into the race. And I'm very glad to have met you and be able to call you a friend.
I remember that phone call. That was great. Look, I'll do something similar. I'll just say something nice about everybody. Rebecca, similarly, you're elevating issues of accessibility and disability, and through your lived experience, I think has been really moving and important. And you've shown the very, very deep importance of representation in our politics and making sure those issues are heard in this race. Chris, you brought a degree of courage and compassion to this race that I think is remarkable. And you can tell, your heart is pure and you fight deeply for progressive causes, no matter the blowback, no matter the pushback, and you're not afraid to take a principled stand. Kim, we're in a politics that, very much needed change here in New York City, the Upper East Side, and you've always been at the forefront of that through the Four Freedoms Club, fighting for true democracy and our Democratic Party. Have deep admiration. And Tricia, the way in which you've not just shared your experience as a young mom, your experience as a Japanese American woman in a time of rising AAPI hate in the city, and your ability to use that, I think, experience for the greater good, to talk about the importance of, again, representation in our politics, but also issues like universal childcare has inspired me. So I will say that about all of you, and it's too bad the other people running in this race are not here right now, so I could also compliment them.
We got to put it near the beginning. She always leaves early.
More shade has been thrown.
I'm happy to jump in, and I'll share a little secret actually, and that's that my family had COVID. We had COVID in late January or early February, and I will say that every single one of the people here reached out to me. Honestly, all the candidates reached out publicly, but the folks here reached out privately, individually, checked in on me and my family. They know that I'm a family person. It's what I talk about all the time, and it's my life. And they all reached out, and it was incredibly thoughtful, and were really supportive when they didn't have to be. I echo everything that's been said. I think that every single candidate, those here and those not here, have brought something to this race that have pushed me, and pushed me harder on policy, pushed me harder on how I view the needs of our community, have pushed me to be more articulate and more thoughtful about how I think about issues. So really and truly, it's a tremendous honor to be running this race with the candidates who are here, and I mean that sincerely. It's been a shock to me how meaningful it's been to be running alongside the folks here.
That was a really nice question, Alex.
Oh, Rebecca's got one more.
Last but not least, I want to start by thanking everyone for their kind words. Running as a disabled New Yorker and getting personal about my experience, my medical history, it was difficult. It's been a process, just being more open and more public about things, and having all of your support just makes it easier for me to get personal and talk about a really difficult time in my life, and what the future could be like is different for me than for others. So I really appreciate that. And then, as Tricia said, I'm so honored to be just fighting alongside all of you for our community. When people ask me who's best, who's this, who's that, no matter what, looking at the people here right now, the community will be in good hands no matter who wins. We're all running because we think our hands are the best, but that's democracy. We get out there, we won our race, and I'm so proud that everyone here is running a high road, amicable race where we can have a group text, we can check in on each other, we can wish each other happy birthday. Like Billy and I, who knew we were birthday twins, Taurus twins right there. I didn't even know that, but seeing each other out campaigning on his birthday, these are the things that make running for office easier, because running for office is really, really difficult. And like you said, Alex, when you get in the game, I have 10 years in the game, seen a lot of dirtiness in politics. It's been a lot of backstabbing and nefarious intentions, but that's not happening with this group. And to more specifically weigh in, I'll say, Trisha, I'm so just in awe of how you've opened up about your experience as a mom, pushing for universal childcare, also advancing a conversation around maternal mortality. A woman this weekend while out campaigning said, "What's your plan for maternal mortality?" And that wouldn't be happening if you weren't out there speaking openly about your experience and about the importance of this issue here in New York City. Kim, the work you've already done in our community as a district leader, speaking truth to power, being an insurgent candidate before it was popular to be, or it was a thing to do, and it was really scary, a path to walk, and what you've been able to do for transparency in government, good government, the policies you've been able to help affect, the elections you've been a part of through Manhattan Young Dems. I'm proud to be in the race with you. Chris, how you lead with compassion and empathy. You know, out there on Twitter, we all get a lot of hate, and I always see you there just leading with positive comments, high road, compassionate responses, where I know even if you don't agree with someone, you're always going to have a full conversation with them that's led with respect and led with compassion, because that's what we need in our discourse. That's what we need in our community, because no matter what, we all call District 5 home, and we need to be able to have those conversations. So I really admire how you do that, how you maintain your truth and your values in all of those conversations. And Billy, I really admire how you've advanced the whole conversation around environmentalism as an intersectional issue. For me, when I talk about disability justice, hearing you talk about environmental justice, I think of it in the same way. It needs to be a part of every single policy conversation we have, every decision that we make, and how you lead with that issue, how you're always talking about it, you're using data, you're using policies to push it forward in a very nuanced way. You've made me think about new things, and that's what campaigning is really great for, because during this process, I'm sure we've all learned a lot, be it behind the scenes campaigning, be it policy points, and you've been a big part of that, Billy. So I really appreciate that. And I'm just happy to be here with everyone and to be a part of such a collaborative, positive council race. So many people, I'm sure we all hear it as well. Other candidates are like, "You guys are so nice up there." And it's like, we're lucky. We're very, very lucky, because not every race is like this. Not every campaign is like this. And I'm proud that we have this here in our community for truly positive campaigning. So voters don't have to see that negativity and that bad politics that has really plagued our city and country for too long.
This was a very nice way to wrap things up. I'm very glad we did that. Before we let you all go, and again, thank you so much for joining the Schneps Media Rapid Fire Debate. District 5, again, quoting the Mighty Ducks here, my favorite hockey team ever. I do have one more question, which I'd like you all to answer in the most honest way you can, and it can be very brief. When New York City returns to a point of safe, full occupancy in whatever grain that may be, what is one notorious tourist activity you will shamelessly do?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, going to a Mets game is not a tourist thing, but I am very much so looking forward to getting back in the stadium, taking my dog Forrest to bark at the park. Outside of that, oh, I mean, our museums are great. We obviously now, while campaigning, don't have time to get to the museums. So many of which are located here on the Upper East Side in the 4th District, though. So I'm looking forward to just walking around, you know, the Met, walking around the Guggenheim, going across the park to the Museum of Natural History. Right now, the whale has its little Band-Aid on because it's a vaccine site. And I just, you know, I look forward to going there, walking around the old Roosevelt section where it's quiet and desolate and just enjoying that, a little slice of New York.
Whoever wants to take it
Well,
next, go for it.
Okay, so this is not touristy. It's similar to what Rebecca said, similar colors. The Knicks have been phenomenal this year, and I cannot wait to get to a Knicks game. I just can't bring myself to do it in the middle of a campaign, but I can't wait. And then touristy in this district, the 92nd Street Y. Okay, the best event I've ever been to in my life was Brian Williams moderating a discussion with the cast of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And if I can ever get back into the Y and be at an event like that with just people laughing their tuchuses off, I will be very, very happy. So if that's touristy enough for you, that's my answer.
Close enough.
Y'all are being way not cheesy enough about this. You're like saying like legit things here. I am going to get myself in one of those canoes in Central Park. I'm inviting you, Trisha, bring Teddy, and we are going to just row our way through and try not to hit any rocks. It's going to go poorly.
You should also take a gondola ride. It's very cute. Take a gondola
Now we're
ride.
talking.
You go from by the boathouse as well. It's very, very fun.
You're inviting me, right, Rebecca? You're coming to. Okay, cool. Let's get everybody. Let's all
Let's
go.
get that gondola. Let's have some iced tea and let's just unwind on June 23rd.
If
Perfect.
I get to go on a boat ride in Central Park with you, Chris, then you can come to Teddy's second birthday party, which is 3 days before the election, and we'll get one of those disgusting bounce houses where all the slobber gets everywhere.
I
on
will
the
be there.
inside,
I will
and
be there.
That's
I've already waved at your husband through the window enough times. You know?
it's not a touristy thing, but honestly, we've got it. We're truly Teddy's birthday is just a couple days before the campaign is done, and we promised him that we would celebrate later and have like one of those birthday parties with a bunch of stuff that just gets sticky with kid germs on it all the time, and it'll be out in a park, of course, but everybody will be invited to come along and see all the kids slobber on one another.
It is not touristy, but everyone always says like, oh, where are you going to travel to when the pandemic is over? I just want to go to a neighborhood bar and just sit at the bar and just have a beer and talk to somebody sitting next to me. I can't believe it's been over a year since I've been able to do that, and we have so many great little dive bars here in Yorkville. So that's the thing that I want to do more than anything, and that's going to happen really soon, and I'm fully vaccinated and I cannot wait. So that's what I'm most excited to do.
You guys all gave good answers. I was talking like Statue of Liberty with the I Heart New York shirt on. Nathan's hot dog in the hand.
We're not.
Well,
We're
I'm
too
right,
honest
taking
and
that.
honest. We're not going to lie to you.
I appreciate that.
I'm going to the Met with a Times Square Elmo. Is that good enough?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Billy, you won.
I was attacked by the Hulk.
You were.
Yes, I was
When was
physically
this?
accosted by the Hulk one time before the shutdown. And then when I pulled myself away, I tripped into this. This is completely real, by the way. I tripped into these birds, this flock of birds. One hit me in the face. And when I recaught my bearings, a street fight broke out directly in front of me. And I was like, this is New York.
Sounds like you're describing the beginning of Avengers Infinity War.
It wasn't that cool.
I see. I think that this has definitely been, Steve, would you agree? This has been the most fun debate that we've had this evening.
Yes, it has been, and you're all very nice people, and I wish you all, whatever happens, may you be successful and happy and joyful.
Everybody take care. Again, this has been the Schneps Media Rapid Fire Debate. Best of luck to you all. And it seems like no matter what happens, you guys are all going to end up either on a gondola or at a bar.
I like the dive bar. I would go to the
Well, we can do all of the above. All of the above.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.
Don't forget ranked choice voting.
Let's wave goodbye.
Yes.
Vote for all of
choice.
us.
All right.
Everybody take care.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Man alive.
Oh.
I'm in fucking Metrotech office.
You're still at Metro. Oh,
How am I gonna go home? This thing started. I'm like exhausted. I wonder if there's a bar outside.
try Rocco's Tacos. It's a tequila bar.
Where's that? Oh, right on Adams.
Oh,
Oh, Rocco's Tacos.
Steven, give me 1 second.
Man, I'm fucking beat.
Hang on, Steven, hold.
No,
hold your
I'm
breath,
here. I'm
hold.
just gonna start packing.
No, I know. People in attendance can still hear and see us.
That wasn't me.
Patrick Bobbelin, thank you for that heads up there. Well, I hope you all like the debate. This is our third one since 5 p.m. So you saw the raw reaction there. Thank you all for still tuning in.
Thank you. My raw reaction. I apologize for a little bit of exuberance.
I don't think there's anything to apologize for, but really, thank you all for attending. Thank you all for being so engaged. We're gonna have plenty of more of these in the future.
Thank you.
All right, Steven, why don't you call my cell phone?
Okay.
Sounds good.